Thank you. So we're going to do a bit of a reverse. We're going to start by me, and then I'll turn to Cinthya. So we're going to start by policy, and then we'll turn to operations. Bonjour tout le monde. Mon nom est André Baril. Je suis le directeur principal à l'intérieur de la Direction générale des réfugiés, à citoyenneté, migration et réfugiés. My presentation will be in English, but of course I can take questions in both French and English. So Cinthya and I would like to speak to you about how immigration is done in Canada, and then of course how the asylum system fits within the immigration program at large. Of course thank you. We've had quite a phenomenon, I think, that started in early 2017 and continues today in terms of irregular migration at the Canada-US border, and so we'll also discuss how we had to respond to this phenomenon. So if we can turn to slide 2, please. So first and foremost, Canada's immigration program is based on managed migration. And so that's our hallmark of our immigration program. It's based on 3 different objectives: economic, family reunification, and then a refugee protection. And then in 2019, so our minister just tabled the levels plan a few weeks ago. So you probably know that in 2019, we're going to welcome between 310,000 and 350,000 new permanent residents to Canada. And out of that number is going to be between 25,000 to 33,000 resettled refugees. So if we go to the next slide. So this slide is important from the perspective that it demonstrates how our managed system works. So on one hand, we have the number of permanent residents that we'll welcome each year. As I mentioned, we have a levels plan, so we define the targets per categories of individuals that we're going to select each year. And so now we have the targets for next year, but you see that there's been quite a lot of growth over the years, and now we're about 20% growth in that program. And you'll hear from one of my colleagues later today at one of the plenary sessions about integration. But that's why planning works so well, is that we're able to plan levels, our processing abroad, and then also plan for integration services in Canada. On the other side, we have temporary residents. So those who want to visit Canada, those who want to come and study, temporary work. And that has also been going up quite a lot, 93% over the last few years. So you can see that we're quite a country of destination for migration. The one element that's very small at the bottom but is very important to this discussion is the asylum system is the only program that doesn't have intake control. And so any foreign nationals that's on Canadian soil can then turn around, make an asylum claim and say, well, I don't want to go back home because I fear for my life. As the number of temporary resident people coming to Canada goes up, we can expect that asylum claims is also going to go up. Next slide. So as Senior Director in Refugee Affairs Branch, my work is around the refugee program. We've designed the program into 2 streams. There's the in-Canada asylum system. You have to be in Canada to be able to make a claim. And then, of course, the Charter applies, Charter of Rights and Freedom. And then the other stream is refugees who are in their first country of asylum, but who do not have a durable solution. And so, in other words, they can't stay there, integrate there. And that is part of our levels plan. And we determined how many we will bring from their first country of asylum where they don't have a durable solution. And we work with UNHCR. We have referrals of the most vulnerable cases through UNHCR. And then we also have private sponsors in Canada who will sponsor refugees from abroad. So who claims asylum in Canada? Geographically, we're quite isolated. If you think about it, we're surrounded by 3 oceans and one neighbor, the United States. And until recently, the United States was the main country of destination for migrants who were coming through the Americas. So what we face would be people coming to visit, to study, to work, and then turn around and say, well, I want to make a claim. I don't want to go back home. Situation is such that I fear for my life. What we are seeing, though, is also a mixed flow. And so Mixed flow is a term that's quite recognized by IOM and UNHCR. So we have migrants who are migrating for a better economic future, but we also have migrants who are forced to flee persecution. And so you can see that through the asylum system when you look at approval rates, for example. Our top 10 source country, you can see that Haiti nationals approval rate's about 22%, but on the other hand, Syrian nationals 91%. So you see the disparity in terms of people who are actually recognized under the Convention for Refugee and the Convention Against Torture. I should just flag, I think I skipped over that, but the main purpose of the asylum system, of course, is to provide protection. And so those grounds are grounded in the Convention for Refugee, so being persecuted for persecution based on race, nationality, political beliefs, and so on. And so it's quite codified in the Refugee Convention and, of course, the Convention for Against Torture, which was ratified later on. So that's, those are the grounds that are being looked at in looking at the approval rates that you're seeing on this slide. So let's fast forward to 2017. I think it's safe to say we were a bit caught by surprise when that happens, but in 2017, we started seeing quite a new phenomenon, which was that people were coming between ports of entry at the Canada-U.S. border. It's quite a long border, and it's quite difficult to detect and intercept people crossing. So we think that that phenomenon started because, of course, we have this Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States. So the principle of a Safe Third Country Agreement is that refugees should seek protection in the first safe country in which they enter after fleeing persecution back home. The Europeans have their Dublin regulations, which is a very similar agreement, if you want. This concept is supported by UNHCR. And for us, Canada and the United States, we have this agreement. But when it was negotiated in the early 2000s, the technology wasn't what it is today. And so it was limited to ports of entry where officers could visually inspect or see the migrant coming from the other territory. And so that's how we've applied it. And so, of course, because of this, we think that that's what's pushed the phenomenon of people coming between ports. So I'll turn to Cinthya for a description of our response to the 2017 events.
Merci André. Bonjour tout le monde. Donc, André mentioned already that in the summer 2017, we saw an increase of irregular migration. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more of how we acted and what we did. So as you can see in the chart, there was a steady growth in overall asylum intake between 2013 and 2016. And in 2017, this intake more than doubled to a new historic high for Canada. The total number of in Canada asylum claims in 2017 reached 50,385. Of these claims, about 41% or 20,000 were made by the regular migrants. So we're talking about people that were crossing the border between designated ports of entry. Of these claims, about 90% or 18,000 were made by asylum seekers who crossed the border in Quebec. So far in 2018, this trend continues with more than 40 claims made between January and September. 40,000 claims, I said, between January 1st and September 30th. Of this amount already, 39% or 15,000 were made by the regular migrants. Okay, so while media attention was focused primarily on irregular migration in the US-Canada border, it's also worth noting that the number of regular claims, or inland claims that we call them, also saw an increase. So you know that inland claims is individuals that are already in Canada, that were admitted to Canada, that are now filing a claim, or filing a claim at a port of entry. So what were the impacts? This is the next slide, please. What were the impacts of this situation on government operations? So when we first began to see this increase in levels of irregular migration in the summer 2017, the first challenge was timely processing. So, en raison d'une augmentation de volume d'immigration irrégulière au Québec, donc il y a un inventaire des demandes en attente d'une décision sur l'admissibilité ou l'éligibilité ou la recevabilité de la demande s'est accru. et ça avait un impact sur les demandeurs. Donc, quel était l'impact sur les demandeurs? Il y avait des délais. Donc, tant et si longtemps qu'une décision n'est pas prise sur la recevabilité de la demande, un demandeur n'a pas le droit d'accéder aux services qui sont fournis par le gouvernement du Québec, ici au Québec. So what did IRCC do to address this challenge? So as you can see, we streamlined processing and opened an innovation hub in Montreal, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. We implemented a 30-day service standard for work permit processing for asylum seekers. We also provided discretionary IFH, so interim federal health program. So the coverage was provided to asylum claimants entering between the ports of entry in Quebec who had not yet received an eligibility decision for their claim. So these changes were very innovative, and that they continue to be in place. So what are the ongoing challenges related to this situation? So we saw that irregular migrants have continued to arrive. So these challenges have had an impact not only on the federal government, but also provincial and municipal governments. I would like to highlight two special challenges. So the first one on our side was that we had to make sure that we had sufficient processing capacity. So we have to be ready for a next wave or, be able to answer quickly. So a total of $173 million has been allocated through Budget 2018 to support operations at the border, as well as the processing of claimants arriving in this fiscal year, 2018. Of this amount, $74 million was allocated to the IRB, to the Immigration and Refugee Board, in order to increase capacity to be able to hear their claims quicker. In addition, $12 million was allocated for legal aid transfers. The second biggest challenge was ensuring that we continue to work closely with provincial and municipal governments. They have highlighted the extraordinary pressures that they also face. For example, emergency shelter and affordable housing in Toronto, and here in Quebec, social assistance and education. So these pressures have created a little bit of a backlog, and the province has difficulty, and the municipalities have difficulty facing these challenges. So we move to the next slide. So in order to address these new challenges and respond to increased levels of irregular migration, the government has developed a 6-point plan. What are these plans? So the first plan is proactive outreach, the first point, sorry. We are continuing public outreach domestically and abroad to correct misinformation about Canada's asylum system. I can give you an example. I had the opportunity to go with MP Rodriguez last year, 2017, to Texas, and we were able to meet with stakeholders, politicians, in order to really demystify the Canadian asylum system. Point number 2 is international engagement. We have proactive international engagement to deter irregular migration, including with the U.S. I can give an example. We saw that an increase of claims from Nigeria, for example, so we had work done also with our counterparts in the U.S. Number 3, operational readiness. We are operationally ready and have developed detailed contingency plans, not only on the national level, but on the regional level as well. Number 4 is border integrity. So we are maintaining the integrity of our border and keeping Canadians safe. Number 5 is a strong provincial and municipal engagement. So we have, as I mentioned before, we have to ensure that we continue to work closely with those governments, with those levels of government, in order to ensure service delivery and including housing, for example. Well, so while we do all that, number 6 is international obligations. So we have to make sure that we meet our international legal obligations by receiving asylum claimants respectfully and humanly and processing each one of the claims. Donc, la dernière slide. En conclusion, donc, on peut dire que les tendances migratoires des dernières années nous permettent de déterminer que le Canada fait face à une nouvelle norme, une nouvelle normalité, on pourrait le dire. How we respond to migration and manage this increased asylum intake going forward will shape public opinion, not only in regards to the Canada's asylum system, but to our own immigration system. It is very important for Canada to remain a welcoming and open nation to those in need of protection, while at the same time ensuring sound border management and the integrity of our own immigration system. So the government recognizes that targeted investments must be made to address these challenges we all face. And this has been demonstrated through investments in Budget 2018, as well as through financial support to our provincial partners. The government remains committed to working with provincial and municipal partners to assist them in finding solutions to the new challenges we all face. Thank you very much.